Good afternoon. Welcome to Inside Indiana Sports Now with Kent Sterling. It's Monday, March 15th, 2021. Well, we're brought to you as always by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Dr. Mike O'Neill, the best dentist that there is. Why wouldn't you call him and avail yourself of his services? Do it now. 317-849-2933. Let's talk about the big news of the day. I thought we were going to be talking a little bit about NFL free agency and the Indianapolis Colts, and are they going to sign an edge rusher? Are they going to go get a wide receiver? Are they going to go get a left tackle? What are they going to do? And then the bomb drops in Bloomington. Archie Miller out. And don't you dare cry a single tear for Archie Miller being the former Indiana University basketball coach, because being the former Indiana University basketball coach pays better than what you are going to make throughout the course of your entire life, unless you are very, very lucky. He's going to get, over the next 3 years, $10.5 million to leave Assembly Hall, to leave Cook Hall, to leave Bloomington behind. All the money that he could spend in his lifetime is his just for failing at that job. Again, you and I should be that lucky. No tears for Archie Miller, none whatsoever. He did not get the job done. Scott Dolson, I'm going to give him a hug, because somehow or another, Scott Dolson, despite the fact that the political terrain in Bloomington is a little bit wobbly right now because Michael McRobbie's leaving at the end of June, and they're going to have a new president, whoever that is, walking in the door on the 1st of July. He didn't know who that is. He didn't know whether that person's going to say, hey, couldn't $10.5 million have been used for something else? Couldn't you put the arm on some donors to get $10.5 to fund something else? You know what I mean? But he stood tall. He said, this will not stand. Non-winning records in the Big Ten over the last 5 seasons, 4 of those authored by Archie Miller. We're not putting up with it. We're moving on. Either Indiana basketball is worth replating for $10.5 million, or what the hell are we doing here, right? That's what he got done. He got the 10.5. He said goodbye to Archie, and I think that he's got to have his guy, right, as the next coach. Because if not, how do you pick up the phone and call donors, big-time donors, and say, look, I got to fire Archie Miller? You want me to fire Archie Miller? You told me last week. Look, send me a check for $3 million. That isn't happening without the person on the other end of the phone saying, well, who are you bringing in? Because I'm not a stoop. Look, if this is going to be a revolving door of A-10 coaches or a guy like Tom Crean, Kelvin Sampson, Archie Miller, these guys who are brand names with a resume, if this is what we're doing, then it's not worth the $3 million. Just bring Archie back, and to hell with it, cancel my season tickets. That's the conversation, right? But Dolson made this thing work, I believe, because he's got his guy already. And I really like that he's been able to do this, and he's going to conduct the search as though it hasn't happened already, without a search committee. These blue ribbon panels of, rich gas bags who sit around a conference table and look at guys and say, well, this Archie Miller fella, I feel like he's pretty darn good. He's gone to the NCAA tournament 4 times in a row. And, A-10 Coach of the Year twice or whatever it was. Went to the Elite Eight. Or Tom Crean, by God, look at what he's done at Marquette. He went to a Final Four, That's what we want. Let's get a guy who's been there and done that to come here and do that. Can we do that? It doesn't matter that the guy doesn't fit, right? It doesn't matter that he can't point to Bloomington on a map. It doesn't matter that he has no idea about how Bloomington works, how Indiana University works, how Indiana University basketball has worked, and what made it succeed when it did succeed. None of that stuff. They're going to come in. It's going to be the University of Tom Crean. It's going to be the University of Archie Miller. That's what you get out of a search committee. That's what you get from impaneling blue ribbon experts who write big-ass checks and share their pearls of wisdom for all to hear. That's what you get out of search committees. That Scott Dolson isn't going to have one. I want to kiss him on the cheek. I want to give him a big fat hug and kiss him on the cheek and buy him a steak. Buy him a steak dinner, and at that steak dinner, I'm going to buy him a microbrew or the cocktail of his choice. That's what I'm going to do for Scott Dolson. That's what I feel like. This is when it's really fun to be an Indiana basketball fan. And how sad is that? Really sad. It's not about the games, right? Not anymore. Not the last 5 years. It hadn't been about the games. Now, you know what? 5 years ago this month, Indiana beat Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. That was really, really fun. This has not been fun. Everything that's happened since then has really not been fun. But right now, everything's possible. Hope exists at Indiana because that chair right now is empty. And it's not being filled by Archie Miller. We knew what Archie Miller was going to bring. We knew what a fifth year of Archie Miller was going to be. This is just what Indiana basketball with Archie Miller as the coach is. You find out after 4 years what you got. And what you had at Indiana was mediocrity. And mediocrity does not work here. So it wasn't tolerated by Scott Dolson. It's not being tolerated by alums, boosters, fans, none of those people. So Dolson acted, and now we're in that lovely period of time before finally somebody says, hey, we got our guy. Here's who he is. When I was at MS Communications in downtown Indianapolis, we had a meeting with Tim Fitzpatrick. Tim, at that point, was kind of the undersecretary to the athletic director. He was Rick Greenspan's guy. And the day that we met with Tim was the day that it was announced that Kelvin Sampson was going to be the next head coach at Indiana. So Tim walks into the room, and we don't know this yet. It hasn't broken yet. Social media was still in its infancy. And Tim walks in and goes, hey, we got our guy. I said, who is it? He goes, Kelvin Sampson. And I'm terrible at kind of restructuring my facial expressions to not reveal what I'm thinking. Really bad at it. And so I don't know what I looked like, but I had to look like troubled, angry, baffled. I think all of those things. I don't know what that looks like. Kind of like that is probably what I looked like with Tim. I said, Kelvin Sampson, huh? Okay. We knew what the story was with Kelvin Sampson at Oklahoma. He was about to be fired at Oklahoma because he did the same things at Oklahoma that he wound up doing at Indiana. There was no way it was going to work right. It was terrible. From the moment that Mike Davis was fired until that moment with Tim, that I heard it was going to be Kelvin Sampson, man, it was kind of fun in Bloomington. And it was fun here. It was fun for Indiana fans because there was hope that the right guy was going to be hired. And then when we heard Kelvin Sampson, I was like, oh no, we're going to have to go through all this mess again. They're getting this all wrong. Then Kelvin Sampson, as was predictable by anybody who knew anything about Kelvin Sampson in the game of college basketball in the NCAA, there's another opening. Dan Dockich did a really nice job filling in after Kelvin Sampson got fired. I loved the way he brought accountability to Indiana. They let Dan go, and then they had another nationwide search, and they come up with Tom Crean. And my phone rang off the hook from people associated with Marquette and with the conferences that Marquette had belonged to. I said, you're going to hate this guy. This is terrible for Indiana. You're going to love him at first, and then his energy is going to wear on you, and then it's going to be big trouble. Then you're going to say, how in the hell do we get rid of this guy? This is the best day at Marquette. Tom Crean leaving. There's going to be a parade in Milwaukee because Tom Crean is leaving. 9 years later, kaboom, Tom Crean out once finally the buyout became manageable, although Fred Glass, the athletic director at the time, would tell you that it had nothing to do with the buyout. And you had a window. Billy Donovan is looking for a home in Bloomington, which we all knew was nonsense, right? But there were all these great rumors, and it was fun, and you had hope that the right guy was going to be hired. And then they say, Archie Miller, and he's not just a home run, he's a grand slam. And you were like, what? How? How's this going to work? I know he had some success at Dayton, but this ain't the A-10. This is Indiana University. Why can't we at Indiana University embrace the heritage of Indiana University and the culture of basketball that existed at Indiana University for a really long time and say, you know what? We've got the blueprint. We just need somebody to execute it. Like Butler does, right? Like Purdue did as they segged from Gene Cady to Matt Painter. And Butler through how many changes? From Barry Collier to Thad Matta to Todd Licklider to Brad Stevens. Ooh, there's a name. We'll talk about him in a minute. To Brandon Miller, that didn't go terribly well. To Chris Holtman, and now to Val Jordan. And they still look just like Butler because that's the culture. Culture is what drives consistent success. And the culture at Indiana is replated every time they make a change with a basketball coach because these guys build their own culture. They don't respect the culture that pre-exists at their new work site. All right? So let's talk about the guys who might be sought out or might have already been sought out by Indiana. So this is part of the fun. I got a call today from an old friend, a guy I went to high school with, who's a business owner down in southern Indiana, has done really, really well for himself. And he tells me that he's at a retail establishment not too long ago, 3 weeks ago. And he's talking to a guy, and he loves talking people up, and he's talking about basketball with the guy, and the guy goes, hey, this is kind of interesting. I don't know what it means. But my mom is a huge, big-time real estate broker in the Bloomington area. Brad Stevens and his family flew down a couple of weeks ago to look at houses in the $1 million a year range in Monroe County. And my mom had a great time with them, said that they were just terrific. This had nothing to do with Indiana basketball, right? This was just part of a conversation that didn't mean a whole lot to my friend until all of a sudden today, he's like, whoa, what? Now, this could be some kind of lunatic putting out an unsubstantiated rumor, but maybe not. Maybe Brad Stevens and the family were in Monroe County looking for a house. Maybe that is true. Now, 95%, it's not true. But there's hope, and that's the fun that exists right now for Indiana basketball fans, that please, dear God, Scott Dolson, deliver a coach that everybody goes, way, and we rally behind. Rather than, who? What? Oh, no. I had a guy send me a note the other day, Buzz Williams. Like, hey, you got to hire Buzz Williams. I'm like, golly, what are you talking about? Buzz Williams? How is that the right answer? Or they'll say Scott Drew. Scott Drew would come to Indiana and try to replicate what he did at Baylor. We don't need that. We've had that again and again and again. We need a guy whose culture is very Indiana, or a guy who has been part and parcel and part of the Indiana culture. That's what is necessary in Bloomington. I really think that Scott Dolson, based upon what he did today, has a chance to go get that guy and build that thing in Bloomington. And I just can't wait. Now, please, don't disappoint us. Because if you disappoint us, my head's going to explode. If you go off and hire a guy who's going to try to bring his level of culture to Bloomington again, like has been done the last 3 times, and really was kind of done the time before that when Mike Davis replaced Bob Knight, and Mike really didn't know where he was in Bloomington or what he was doing. Please, do not do that again. We don't need that. I'm not saying it's got to be Brad Stevens. If it is Brad Stevens, and my friend had been talking to a guy who actually knew something instead of like these crazy rumors, right, about Billy Donovan, 4 years ago when Miller was hired. You know what I mean? We don't need that. I don't want that. I don't want to, percolate that kind of nonsense. But this, maybe it's accurate. Maybe it's not. Swear to God, a friend of mine called and said that. Brad Stevens, he was looking at a house. I heard from this guy at a place in Clarksville that was blah, 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 blah. It's a great conversation. I love it. That's what we're in for whatever period of time this is, between right now and when they name a new coach. I would be thrilled with Dane Fife. You want to know who I think it ought to be? If it can't be Brad, if it can't be John Beilein, give me Dane Fife. All day long, Dane Fife. We'll talk to you in the morning. Breakfast with Kent, bright and early, 7 o'clock. maybe a little bit before that on Facebook Live and YouTube. Hit subscribe, would you?